All right, I think, yeah. So our last slide here, just as the presentation summary. So what we looked at today is we talked about what is ERP, what are some of the features and benefits of ERP, what are the myths, and am I ready for ERP, or how do you know when you're ready for ERP? How to go about sourcing and implementing the ERP, and then just my final comments over the years on food for thought to the group. So I hope that was beneficial. I hope you learned something there. And we've got some time for Q&A, I think 10, 15 minutes. So happy to answer any questions anyone may have.
Thanks, Brian. That was a lot of information there.
Yeah, and I can provide I'm sure they'll get the slide deck, or I can send over, or they'll have some access to the information if they didn't get it all down.
Yes, we are recording, so we will send this out to everyone once we have it ready to go.
Perfect.
There's many benefits to using the ERP system for food processors, as I'm kind of seeing. It can help introduce new products to markets faster and cheaper than your competitors. It can ensure compliance to food safety regulations. It can help control costs through reduced wastage, optimum material utilization, and inventory management. It could help achieve end-to-end bi-directional traceability from the raw material down through the finished product. It can help improve operational efficiency of your manufacturing process. It also can help to have complete control of your business by accessing real-time data of production, sales, and distribution. And I can see it as a tool to forecast sales and orders, converting orders into production plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a great tie-in with ERP to our food processing businesses. Is there any questions from anybody? Brian, I think this is a fairly new kind of material to our food processors.
Okay.
We are going to encourage it for them to keep control of their plans. And I do see that there is a hand up. Amanda, what is your question?
Hi, good morning. This is all very interesting. I'm curious about, so inventory management was presented to me a couple of years ago in creating a system, but this is bigger than inventory management, right?
Yes, the ERP system will have an inventory management component to it.
Right.
But yes, it has inventory, but it's larger than just a standalone inventory system.
And so what do they cost? Like, what is the cost generally?
Yeah, well, that's a tricky one to answer, right? Because as I said before, the licensing for ERP systems can vary depending on the software based on the user count. Do you have 2 users using it or 200 users? The different complexity levels. So, I would find it very hard to just give out a number because it can vary so much. But
okay,
if you're
so like
I'm
a small business.
Okay.
And we have 6 people on staff, and I'm not sure that all of us would need access to it.
Okay.
And like we do all of our own distribution. We currently use QuickBooks Online, and we're considering getting a CRM like Method, which is a pay-per-user tie-in to QuickBooks for that. So like in comparison to that, those 2 systems, plus I use like, the only thing I didn't notice on there was like a POS option. So like if we have customers that are direct, we would still have to have a separate POS system, correct?
No, so oftentimes these systems will have a point of sale component to it. So there's counter sales, or it can just be online sales. So yeah, there's different systems that'll have those modules, or it may be a third-party product that, again, so you would probably fit into like the tier 2 level. So if you're on the QuickBooks Online and you're growing, and you need something more robust, those tier 2 levels will have those main modules you need, but they may have a third-party product that's sort of what we call best of breed. So it'll have something that's the best product for point of sale or counter sales or e-commerce, that type of thing. Yeah, so it's I don't want to give out a number. It's probably going to be software and services. It could be that $40,000 to $100,000 range, maybe. So there is a bit of a
for
cost.
starting out. Wow.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is you're gonna buy the software, right? So let's say the software, even on a higher end system, could be, you know, like $200 a month per user, right? So that's, if you had 5 people, say it's $1,000 a month. So that's one component to it. But then you're gonna have the implementation of that software. So it's not like plug and play like QuickBooks, right? You load QuickBooks, it's all there. With these systems, you have to create a chart of accounts. You have to create a vendors listing. You have to do all these setups and configuration. And how is my system going to run through this? Well, if you've got your warehouse and your inventory, you're going to say, okay, what are my item numbers? What's my bill of materials? What are all my, you know, vendor specific information? So the person or the vendor implementing are going to ask you all of these questions, and they're typically charging you per hour or, you know, a flat fee to go about doing an analysis and design. Then there's the configuration. Then there's like the deployment and the training and the testing. And then there's like the go live and then all the reporting that sits on top. So again, I've seen projects where, you know, maybe you're at 100 hours of service, you know, and up, like maybe 120, 100 to 200 hours, you know, and most vendors are now in that $200 an hour range. So, you know, if you said conservatively 150-hour project at $200 an hour, so that's $30,000 in services right there. So that's where it's going to be the most expensive. But again, those are, you know, the upfront, get it done. And then on a go forward basis, you know, if your subscription is $1,000 a month for 5 users, that's pretty doable, I think, for most organizations. And what you'll hear after, I don't know if it's directly after me or at the end, about getting government grants to help offset those implementation services. So I don't want to scare you and say it's, you know, $100,000 or $50,000, but just think of some context of you need a partner who's going to come in, understand your business, ask you all these questions, and then go and set up the system, help test the system, get it going live. That's where you're going to spend the most money up front. Does that answer your question or give you some guidance there, I hope?
Yeah, well, if that's how much it costs and those are all the other things, I'm just wondering, like, it's not able to pull from my current systems, the data, it all has to be re-entered?
No, so there's a data migration piece. So if you're saying I'm going to move off of QuickBooks and get into, you know, a different type of ERP system, all that data can be exported. But in some cases, like with QuickBooks, I use QuickBooks Online for some stuff. And like for my vendors, for example, I just call it, you know, Brian Hack as a vendor, for example. In a system, there's going to be a vendor ID. So it may be like BHack001. And then there's the name, the address, all the buying information that's associated that you may not have in your current system. Maybe you want to do electronic fund transfers, so you have to get banking information for vendors. So, you know, there's a little bit more than what you have today that'll be required or could be useful for you in the new system. And at the same time, too, if you're doing a change, now is the time to look holistically at your organization and say, okay, well, in QuickBooks, I've got a 1-segment chart of accounts, as they call it, right? You have a main account, call it, you know, 4,000 is sales and 5,000 is cost of goods sold and 1,200 is inventory. Well, in a new system, you create segments or have dimensions. And the dimensions could be the main account, maybe a location, maybe a department, maybe a region, maybe a customer type. That's very important. So all of a sudden, there's new things that you don't have today that you can have and should have that the vendor is going to walk you through. But you're right. You can hit export, get your inventory list, do a bunch of cleanup on it, and then hit import and import it into the new system. But there is setup information that will be required. So another example is inventory. You can create different inventory classes or inventory groups, which you may or may not have in say, QuickBooks, or you have it in an Excel spreadsheet if you're tracking that today. You can have warehouses, you can have locations, you can have bins. Again, I don't know your entire organization, but at the end of the day, those key setup fields or values have to be in this table. So when you import the data, it validates against something that exists. And oftentimes I see that in data conversion. You can't upload something if the master record isn't there.
Okay, that's cool. Is there like any like thresholds, right? Because you're saying like we all operate out of one location. We do all of our own distribution. You know, we're under 500,000 in sales a year. Like, where is there like a threshold that's like, oh, okay, there's some like just markers that maybe you should consider this option? Like, I think it's a little bit too much for what we have. But after your comment about like, look at how much you're paying for QuickBooks, look how much I'm paying for Method, look how much I'm paying for my POS system, right? And kind of put it together. Are there any markers like that as a business owner I should just kind of like keep my pulse on?
I would just say, yeah, I don't want to say like you need to be at $1 million in sales to then, look at an ERP system. I think it's all those other factors, right? How efficient do you think you are? Because it does come with an upfront cost, right? The implementation cost is what's going to get you. So once you hear later on about if you qualify for the Canadian Digital Adoption Program and you can get funding, that can help cover a lot of that. So I would say, look at those systems, say, okay, realistically, I'm spending $800 a month, or maybe it's $300 a month. You just need to do a little bit more research with the different products and vendors to find out if I move to your system, that's going to give me all these great features and benefits. How much is that going to cost me a month? And then do that cost analysis. And then the implementation cost is just going to be, a one-time thing just to get you up and running. And then from there, it's a small maintenance fee every month, perhaps, or that continuous improvement. So I'm just hesitant to say, yeah, at this point you should move. There's just so many other factors, and happy to have a conversation after this as well if you would like. I'm happy to do that.
Thank you. We have another question here. How reliable are ERP systems in terms of cybersecurity, system crashes, and things like that?
Yeah, so they're very reliable. Especially if it's cloud-based. So, if you're dealing with Microsoft or NetSuite or Oracle, all those companies have all the proper legislation in place. They've got all of the backups and restores, all the fail-safe overs, like if the internet goes down, that's stored somewhere else. So from that perspective, you're super safe on the data side with those massive vendors. The downside is if you have a subscription-based service and you're maybe more in a rural area and your internet goes down, then that may be a bit tricky because you can't connect to your system. But if you have a backup internet connection, so if one provider goes down, you switch over to the other, then you're up and running, then you're fine. If you look at having your data sit on your own servers, that's a little different story. I have had customers that have been hacked with ransomware, where someone's going to hack into their server, lock their data, and all of a sudden you can't get to it anymore. That's a little trickier because now you need a little bit more of, training on users about phishing emails and clicking on links that they shouldn't. So, you got to work with your IT department on that. But as far as security, safety of the data in the cloud, it's pretty solid. I wouldn't worry about that one. It's more on premise that you have to be concerned about.
Okay. Are there any other questions? I think that's all that I have right now. Oh, we have one more.
I have
question.
one, if I may.
Yes, Jeff.
Yeah, I see. Like one of the, I guess, as a funder of this, working for Manitoba Agriculture, one of the opportunities I envision for companies being able to exploit, hopefully, and I guess I've seen this in walking larger facilities. So I'm not sure to the extent of how much scale is required to do this, but I'm thinking like a process flow on the processing floor, in terms of raw materials in at one stage, the mixing stage, the cutting stages, the baking stages, whatever, like through that. Is that something that is, I guess I'm wondering, Brian, is what scale do you see is necessary before someone is able to think about those sort of things, and is fairly doable in terms of the machinery that's out there these days?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, again, it's a tough one, right? I think if internally the project team or the resources and the company can go through and document that process and look at the workflow and the operations as it moves from stage to stage, that's good to have a basic understanding from that perspective, because that's going to then drive the work centers and the route when you put that into your system. So at some point it has to occur. But like from a technology perspective, I don't think there's So Jeff, is it more around what technology to help document that, or is it more at what level should you document that?
Yeah, I guess it'd be in terms of how easy or how difficult is it to actually integrate different components in a process and get them talking to each other.
Yeah, okay.
Probably it depends, I imagine.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, I did it wasn't food related, but just as an experience that I can relate to with kitchen cabinet manufacturer, right? So they manufacture kitchen cabinets. So you go onto the shop floor, you know, I guess the first stage is they'll create the order, it'll go through a CAD design, the bill of materials will get pushed out and it'll go to the first stage, and then the first person starts the process. So, you know, the system that you will look at will have a more manufacturing focus than more, say, like an accounting or distribution focus. You want to find a system that's good for manufacturing. So it's going to have all the work centers and the routes, and the bill of materials is going to push in to say, take 3 of these and 6 of those and 2 of those, and help you. It's going to do that for you and move the product along the cycle. So as you go from, you know, computer machine to the next one, it's going to do that for you.
Okay,
that's just
excellent.
inherent in some of those manufacturing systems for sure.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, I'm available for any further questions. If you think of something after the session, please feel free to reach out to me directly or through Karen and the team, and they can pass on the information as well.